Welcome to the Heart of It All. I'm Teri Hart. As Alzheimer's Awareness Month continues, we wanted to have this month's personal story be from someone living the life as a caregiver to someone with Alzheimer's. Not only is Heidi Levitt that person, she has also made a movie about her experience with her husband, Charlie Hess, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2019. Hi there. This episode of The Heart of It All is presented by Capital Direct. Becoming a caregiver means making decisions that you have never had to before and filling your brain with a whole lot of new information. For many, it can be overwhelming. The Capital Direct Flexi Line allows you to access some of the equity in your home and pay it back when the time is right for you. Capital Direct understands that life can take unexpected turns, and you may need to free up some space to make the decisions that are right for you and your loved ones. All you need to know can be found at capitaldirect.ca. We have a very special edition of the pod for you today. For years, Heidi Levitt was a casting director, working on movies like The Artist, JFK, Natural Born Killers, Nurse Betty, and a favorite of mine, All My Puny Sorrows. About 6 years ago, Heidi's husband of over 30 years was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Heidi, a person of action, dove into their new challenge with not only research, but also creation, making a movie about their experience called Walk With Me. We've been speaking with doctors and experts about Alzheimer's for the past couple of weeks, but there is nothing that will help us understand the toll this disease takes on a person and their caregivers more than someone who is actually living it. Heidi is that person, and we are so grateful for her time here on The Heart of It All. Heidi, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Charlie, your delightful husband, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2019. And in the documentary, you suggest that there maybe were some signs or symptoms earlier than that. What were they?
I think when a person is experiencing dementia, Alzheimer's being the most common form, what people need to remember is it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's something that develops over time. And sometimes it would present itself in older age, which is much more common, like the Alzheimer's that he has, which is early onset, that was diagnosed at 57. And so that's early. And what I would say is that one of the theories right now in a lot of dementia and many diseases is about inflammation. We hear about inflammation all the time, and there's neuroinflammation. And there's triggers that bring this on perhaps earlier. Like maybe it was always in the cards to be something he was going to develop, but it was not in the cards that it was going to present itself when he was in his 50s. And what I would say that I saw happening was more of a feeling of intractability, not being able to pivot if something would change.
That was atypical to the person you married?
What I'd say is it was that the ability to adapt to change was not, yes, is atypical. And as my son was born in 2000, and I'd say that somewhere around 2000 maybe is when I started to see problems that I didn't know would be ultimately, I think, related to dementia. So he stopped being able to sleep well. That was one of the signs, because when sleep is disruptive, this is a very protective part of our brain, because having long sleep cycles regenerates your brain. And this was probably one thing. The other thing that I noticed, somebody who was becoming more temperamental or feeling cut off in conversation. And part of it was more that his brain was probably having a harder time keeping up the pace. This was a person, I say this in the documentary, who was fast. I never would have thought this. So the irascibles, the agitation I was seeing partly was that.
Before this, before 2019, how much did you know about the disease?
I knew nothing. I knew nothing. It does not run in my family. I love Sarah Polley's book, Away from Her. I mean, the Dallas Monroe book, the movie.
Yep.
That's the best Alzheimer's movie, I feel, in some ways. And then, of course, I'd seen Still Alice then. So those movies to me, in terms of general movies for a population, like opened my eyes a little bit to it. But at the same time, the difference is like Away from Her is dealing with an older person dealing with it. And that is the traditional way that I and most people think about it is, oh, they're going senile. That was the terminology, right?
Absolutely.
Nobody talked about it as a disease. It was kind of like, oh, they're losing their memory. But there is a piece of it that I'd like to say that it's like, as we grow older, we slow down. We're not as strong anymore. We're not as agile, maybe. It's natural for us to lose some cognitive stamina in some ways, right? It's natural for the brain to have shrinkage, but it's not natural for the disease, which is, we think about cancer of proliferation of bad cells, and Alzheimer's is the loss of all of these cells caused by multi-factors. We can't just do a biopsy. That's the problem, is we really learn about it in autopsy. So we have been able to solve many cancers and have many cancer survivors. And we don't have survivors of this disease, really.
When you first heard the diagnosis, Heidi, take me back to, as you said, knowing nothing, being able to reference, Sarah's movie Away from Her and, Julianne Moore and Still Alice. And take me to that time of like, Charlie has Alzheimer's. What worried you the most at that time?
What can I do? Right? I was like, oh my God, like I'm a producer who's problem solving all the time. Somebody's going to tell me we can do something, right? And I stay up all night and I'm looking at things and I'm calling doctors all over the world to figure out, like, well, wait a minute, there's got to be something we can do here. And I find out in pretty short order, yeah, we could try this trial. We could do this. I mean, we signed up for some preliminary ones, but ultimately we don't understand the brain well enough yet. And that's when I turned to having to make a film, because I'm thinking to myself, like, this isn't just happening to us. This is happening to more than 50 million other families, which is going to easily become, 100 million other. I mean, it's a very common disease that as we age and we solve other problems, it's creeping up to being a killer that is going to become a number one rather than number 4 or 5.
What do you wish more people understood about those early stages of Alzheimer's?
We do have tests that we can diagnose earlier. And on one level, it's really important to start this diagnosis early, because they'll be able to pinpoint what kind of dementia you have and what it is, and if it's Alzheimer's, and is it treatable. And if we don't diagnose it, like the earlier stage may be the one stage that we'd be able to stop the progression. So a lot of the therapies that are out there right now, which I'm not a huge fan of because I don't think they're doing enough. There's anti-amyloid therapies, which are infusions that are huge amounts of time to commit to, and there's risks with brain bleeds. If you have cardio problems, it's a delicate road to know if it would be right for you. And I don't feel like we're seeing it stopping the disease. It might be giving you another 3 to 6 months more before. Okay, well, yeah, that's something, but is it enough? I'm like, damn, no, it's not enough. We need to stop it, right? We have been able to cure many cancers, many. And the other thing about this is that it's such an invisible disease. Anything to do with mental health, disease of the mind, are really hard for people to see and take in as a disease because there's no physical necessarily appearance. A person going through chemo, you empathize, oh my God, they're wearing a wig, or oh my God, they're missing this arm, or,
The weight loss or the gauntness or the all of it.
right. There's like this, I am sick, which is terrible, but it also makes one feel empathy. Whereas my husband looks totally fine, but he's not fine. And it's not okay. And we've been ignoring, I think, because culturally, this is a very hard disease to face because as any disease is difficult to deal with, any disease that has no cure is awful. But a disease where you lose who you are, your identity, your personality, your very essence of soul is being stripped. That is like, it's so hard to watch.
You actually say in the documentary, you say, you don't go through any disease alone, but in this case, you become entwined. And I'm
Mm.
wondering if you can dig a little bit deeper for me on that, Heidi, and explain to the listeners what you mean in terms of that enmeshment between the person living with the disease and their caregiver.
So your partners, if you're in a good relationship and you've been maybe somebody like, I feel like I was always taking care of the travel plan or the booking of reservations or paying of tuition or things like I was like the logistics end of the partnership, right? But you're watching what's happening is this person is thinking, I'm your equal. Like we've been equals for 30 years. And they're becoming more like a needy child. And how do you preserve the dignity of the person, the love that you had? Because the person that you loved is disappearing. It's like this relationship, this entanglement becomes more and more complex.
You, as I said in the intro, you are a person who has been living this for years now. Can you walk me through those stages of caregiving with this disease, Alzheimer's?
Yes, this is very important. And Emma Willis wrote a book about her husband, Bruce Willis, the movie star who had frontal temporal dementia. She has a book out right now, which is talking about this caregiving journey and the stages. And her stages, we've met, and I'm really, impressed by everything Emma has done in terms of advocacy in this book. I thought that her book really captured well about going through the stages of realizing that she was doing it on her own. I was just in awe of like, how did you do this with him? And her realization that A, she needed help, and that at a certain point, she needed to preserve her family. Now, everybody has their own choice of what the caregiving stages are. Like, I'm going to keep doing this alone because they're my partner. I'm doing it. We're all taught we can do it all. We're superwoman. And then there's this moment of realization of, oh my God, I can't do this anymore alone. And then ultimately, there might be a moment of, I can't have my partner here because it's now at a place where not only can I not take care of myself, but maybe it's becoming I'm going down with the ship. And he wouldn't want that. But this is a very dicey place to sort of recognize. In the case where women, I have other friends who've gone through this and they, like Emma, had younger children, it's easy to see how those partners were saying, I'm preserving my family, my children. When you don't have that in the picture, right, then it's about, okay, am I preserving myself? Is it selfish of me to preserve myself? And then there's, if I don't preserve myself, I cannot help him.
That makes me think about that question I asked you earlier about how did you respond when Charlie was first diagnosed? And you said you had this real, like, what can I do about it? And it seems to me what I'm hearing from you is that you've taken that what can I do about it and expanded it into how is the world working for people living with dementia?
Yes. I do feel that way. I very much want to advocate for caregivers because as hard as it is to, of course, I want a cure. I want to help raise awareness for Alzheimer's, but we're all caregivers, whether it's for Alzheimer's or anything. Like we're all going to need them. And it's typically a female position and it's typically unpaid. And the economy in the United States has been deemed as a $1 trillion unpaid economy, right? Once we start putting a number to the number of hours and an economic value, maybe government will pay attention, right? Because this is something like I would be a more productive person in my work if I had more support for caring for my husband. Do I want to go bankrupt caring for my husband? No, but I don't know where to get guidance.
It's interesting because we get to meet your mom and dad in Walk With Me, and your mom is dealing with cognitive issues, and you and your dad had a very different philosophy about your caregiving roles for your respective spouses. He being accepting, for the lack of a better term, and you being proactive, for lack of a better term. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, Heidi, about you and your dad being in this similar position with your partners and how you've approached it?
Yeah, I'm really inspired by my father now. My mother was the Uber version of me. Okay. She took care of everybody and everything. And now she probably has Alzheimer's too. He was taken care of by her. So it's completely changed. He had to become the caregiver. But I've been inspired by his ability to shift and his ability to buy her clothes now and to make sure that she goes to the hairdresser and to, and to accept care. He, for the longest time, was like, we don't need anyone. We don't need anyone. And I'm like, yes, you do.
That is very interesting. Very interesting, that aspect of it. When a caregiver has to accept that they need help to caregive.
Right. And once he accepted that he was going to have help in his house, when he finally accepted that they were going to need care, he became a better caregiver himself as well. Right.
Isn't that the message that we all need to hear?
Yes. And I'm ridiculously not becoming better at it myself. I am trying hard, but I'm not as good at it.
I'm gonna send you a strongly worded email, Heidi. I'm gonna send it to you and remind you that accepting care as a caregiver is the best thing you can do for yourself and the person needing the care. It's really interesting. One of the things that struck me in the movie is when the doctor said to you, "The patient is doing the best they can."
Yeah.
And it really stopped me, Heidi, because it was a wonderful reminder that nobody is trying to either be difficult or not be their best selves.
Right.
They're living with a disease. Do you agree with that?
I do. It's really hard. And we're constantly, and what you were talking about, the entanglement and the partnership and this idea of like bringing on more care, which I'm trying to do right now, is in an effort to be his wife again and not only his caregiver, to keep the moments that I can keep because you can get so lost in the minutia of getting someone dressed, getting someone, just dealing with them that they lose who they are to you completely. And if you allow the caregivers in, but that's the thing is like, it's really hard. Nobody's going to do it as well as you.
It's interesting because I can hear you, I can hear it in your voice that you're trying to talk yourself into this rationalization, that you know it's true, but you can't quite get past the fact of, but it's not going to be me with Charlie then.
The other thing is I'm a casting director. That's my job as a casting director of movies. So like I was approaching this like I've got to find the right person. And a lot of people like around me were like, look, you're looking for that needle in the haystack. It's not there. And I'm like, but that's how I approach my work, right? I've got to find the right person. And I feel that caregiving is not it's not a job in the same way that we were talking about, like, there's a lot of unpaid caregivers because it's family first, it's about that. But as a job itself, we do not look at this as important as being a nurse, and it is just as important, you know? We do not value it or pay for it in the same way. I feel like if it was seen as a more valuable part of society, it would move up in status as a job because we need really skilled people. It's not as simple, especially with dementia. It's very complicated. So I do want to change that conversation on a national level and international level because we need to talk about it in a different way. We need to acknowledge not only that we're behind in the disease and why we are, because we're afraid, but there's also this part that we live in a society that does not want to accept aging, right? So I feel what we have about what you're doing and what I'm trying to do is wait a minute, let's shift our focus a little bit and include people with dementia in our society in a broader way.
You mentioned in the documentary the difference between taking care of Charlie versus parenting him. And we've talked about this on the podcast before, Heidi, about infantilization of a person living with dementia and how somebody avoids that. How have you reconciled that challenge?
I think it's trial and error. I really feel like you get so frustrated sometimes you just like it's like a spoiled toddler, like you just have to shut them down. So you really try to meet them where they're at, right? Don't try to give him a task to do that he can't do. If I say, "Can you take the laundry out of the washing machine and put it in the dryer?" and then like have to do it for him because he's clearly not able to understand the sequence, that's infantilizing him. So don't ask him to do that. Ask him to do things where he's going to excel in, things that, he's good at, like connecting with people or being, going with the dog on a walk and meeting people, like you can take your dog for a walk. You can do that. Do it. It's like it's whatever they can do, you want them to do. It's weird though, we learned pickleball recently, and I thought I was really resistant to trying to teach Charlie pickleball because I thought, no, no, he doesn't know how to play pickleball. We play tennis and it's different and it's going to be more confusing. But that was a surprise. Like, why? Wait a minute. Actually, maybe you're better at pickleball. Maybe that is what I should be doing. Right. So I was under the guise of like, don't try to give them new things to learn. But in this particular case, it was sort of an adaptive and maybe a better choice. Right.
I love that. I love to not box ourselves into rules, that it's trial and error and something might work even though it's counterintuitive.
Right. In the movie, you see me playing Scrabble with him. He won lots of Scrabble tournament things. The other day, I thought, okay, let's try backgammon because maybe you could do that. That was not good. you know? Now, I don't know if I can go back to the Scrabble or not, but I was like thinking, you got to keep trying. That is important. And one thing I would say that is important for you to say to the listeners, really what we need when people say, "What can I do to help you?" That's not the question to ask. The question is, can I take you to book club on Wednesday? Can I drive you? Because the caregiver, we hate to ask people for help. But if you specifically said, "Hey, can I bring over some soup for you?" I'd say yes. So I want people to understand this. Don't like say, "Oh, well, they didn't ask for anything. That's why I haven't helped them." We don't want to ask. We want you to ask us, "Can I do this? I baked an extra whatever. Can I bring that? Can I take Charlie to the park for you today?" It's astounding how much people in politeness are like waiting for you. And that's not the way.
What parts do you think, Heidi, of caregiving are the most impossible for people on the outside to recognize?
It's hard for people. What I was just talking about, I think, is it's very invisible. It's this idea that, again, going back to a society where we're trained to like do everything ourselves, take care of ourselves. If we ask for social welfare, that means we're a failure. And for caregiving, we need to ask for help because we need help. We're all going to need it. But if we as a society had policies that made it de rigueur to have help at this point in our life, like maternity leave, it's expected, right? You get maternity leave. It's not a question. So that's why I think in order for the care spectrum to change, we need to change the way we think about society and what our basic needs are. In Canada, you have a basic need being met for universal health care. Might not be met as well as you want, but it's there, and then you move on. But it's expected, right? That you're going to get it. It needs to be expected that at some points in our life, we need help. Not just that when we have a heart attack that we're in the hospital, but that we need help because of aging and disease that happens, that requires help.
What would you say to somebody listening to this who is just starting on this Alzheimer's journey?
Build your community from the get-go, and also take more time on the early part of the journey to have alone time for yourself as the caregiver. Because as the journey continues, you lose that time. And I don't want to feel like I'm going to regain my time because at some point I might not be able to care for him and he's going to have to live somewhere else. I don't want to wait for that time, right? So I feel like knowing early, I might have planned some more thoughtfulness for my own self.
Mm.
And I feel like building that community early and teaching people, like, look, this is going to be happening. And I need you to be there by you check in on me. I don't want to have to call. Like, stop the politeness.
So, in that vein, just to be clear, what kinds of support have been the most meaningful for you as a caregiver?
My dad just offering me, if you need money, take some. It's been huge. Okay. Because I can't work as much, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like the most meaningful for me was people who were stepping up for my husband and going to take him out and spending time. I'm not such a good example because I think a lot of people would see me and think of me as like, she's got it under control. She's okay. And that was probably my own way of presenting because I was like, of course I have it under control. I've had everything under control.
Well, and who else is going to have it under control? Like, I think that caregivers have to lead with that they do have it under control. Because if they pull that string, the proverbial string, the entire sweater is going to come undone in no time. I mean, I think that can be as precarious as it truly is for somebody caregiving.
Yes, and I do think is like moving aside and making room for new people in your life. That the people who are not sticking by you because it might be a lot of people, I think it might be too hard for them. It could happen to me. They see themselves in this, or they went through it. It was too hard with their parent. They don't want to face it. So that's okay, but you need as a caregiver to make room for the new people that you're going to meet on the journey because you will meet new people. And it doesn't mean that the old people might not come back at some point, but it's more instead of I've stopped being angry at who left me and tried to be more gracious and grateful to who I met.
That brings me to this idea of the moments that have been made richer or deeper, or the good moments amongst the pain.
I guess for me, it was finding an artistic voice. My own voice because I've been an enabler and a supporter of many very wonderful artists and worked in the film industry for more than 30 years, and I've always supported somebody else's vision. And so for me, making the film was discovering, and it was really my children who said, like, "You're doing this because you need to do this. Like, it's not all about the public." Like, I felt like I was doing this first because I have the privilege. I'm in Hollywood. I know people, and I can try to get this done because there's many people like us. But the selfish part, and I don't think it's selfish, I think it's an artist's part of myself, was that I'd been hiding how I wanted to do things, how I wanted to express something artistic. And I never would have been in this position had this not happened. And it wasn't the movie that I ever wanted to make. I say it's a movie I had to make. And now I have more movies and I'm writing a play about it. Like, I feel like that's been a surprise that, no, I have a voice too.
And we are better for that art. The movie is spectacular. I ask everybody who's on the podcast this same question because I think it is the question of our time. How do we better support caregivers?
I think we show up. We don't ask, we show up. And I think we recognize that what they're going through is something that I might go through. Because Rosalind Carter said there are 4 kinds of people in the world: those who will be caregivers, those who are, those who were, and those who need. And we basically have to acknowledge that what we can do better is show up and talk about care and make it an international issue that's not expected. It's not like, of course you are doing this. It's more, we need to do this because we all need it. And it's going to help make a better society, to be more inclusive and to be more empathetic.
Oh, Heidi, you have shared so much. And I think that people can really walk away with nuggets of wisdom of this lived experience for you and really how we can help people in our lives that are in the caregiving experience. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
We are so grateful to Heidi for sharing her experience with us here on The Heart of It All. Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast presented by capitaldirect.ca. We are thankful to the amazing response we've been receiving for all of our Alzheimer's content. Please be sure to share these episodes with anyone who could benefit from them. And don't forget to reach out to us. We love hearing from you on all of our social channels: Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok. And our website is theheartofitall.ca. You can send us a direct email there if it's easier. Thanks so much for listening, and please take care. Of course, this week's movie recommendation is Heidi's movie. It is called Walk With Me. And if you want to see this movie, reach out to Heidi at walkwithmedoc.com, and her distributor is Outsider Pictures. They're going to help you facilitate where you can see this movie, and you could be instrumental in it coming to your community. It's a really, really lovely documentary. You'll meet Heidi, her husband Charlie, and their extended family, and see how Alzheimer's affects them all.